Welcome to Deep Thought. People can only deal with you on their level of perception. Let me say that again. A person can only deal with you on their level of perception. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example, right? I'm a 54-year-old, I'll be 54 in a few days, 53 for now, old African-American man, right? Now, if a person's perception of an older black man is someone who's broken or dusty or whatever, right? That's how they're going to see me. That's how they're going to see me. When they first look at me, they're going to have, if they have a negative perception of black men in general, older black men in particular, they're going to see me because that's their perception, right? And thus, that's how they will deal with me. That's how they will speak with me, right? Or let me make this more fun. Okay. They see me in some sweats or something, right? They see me in some sweats. They'll deal with me on that level, right? They won't see me any other way, right? Now, that's their perception. That's their level of perception. That's all they can see. That's all they can handle, right? Now, so, maybe they might speak to me or something. They expecting one thing, but then I hit them with something else. I get deep or something, or I start talking about politics, right? Still avoiding political discussion. Still, I'm going to avoid those, right? But I might start talking about politics, right? Or start talking about religion. Now, some people will be surprised, but if a person's perception can't go beyond that, or something in them can't allow them, something's going to click. They're going to think, wait, something's wrong here. Or they might feel like, oh, there's some bullshit, right? Like, I give you another example. Right? Now, I've mentioned before, I've worked all over. Now, I've worked both in the government and at gyms at the same time, right? Because, I didn't have kids at the time. When I was doing that, I didn't have kids at the time. And, had extra time. Which I advise, as an aside, I advise anybody, if you got time to make money and you don't have any responsibility, this is the best time. Just do it for savings. Stay busy, develop a savings. You'll thank me later, right? But, so one of the things working on different jobs, because I was always that type to keep like 2 or 3 jobs, But, and there's something else with that too. Now, I just told you I was the type to keep several jobs, but at the same time, you have some people who have a perception of black men being lazy and not wanting to work. And I've dealt with that too. And, I actually dealt with that, working in the government or something, right? They was like, Rom, you don't want to do this or that. And I'm like, you got that perception? You don't know about my job and my business? Is that a person who's just being a slacker, right? And I thought about that. I was like, you know what? That's their overall perception. So they can't deal with anybody doing beyond. It's like when I wrote this book, story about successful black men, right? It was controversial. It was successful black men and the shortage of good black women. And many women had a problem with it. Not that I said it was a shortage of good black women. Ironically, very few people actually talked about that notion, but just that the fact there was successful black men, they thought I was making up stuff. And I'm just like, you can check any demographic study from any official, you can just check the U.S. Census, right? Obviously, somebody making some money, and they're not just athletes, but their perception is that's not the case. But see, one of the things to understand, if people have a certain perception of you, and it's usually based on not just archetypes, but stereotypes, media images, a whole bunch of things, and then their own personal experience, right? Like if a woman hadn't grown up around a successful black man or been around them, And her only perception is men she grew up around who weren't doing anything, weren't working, doing anything. And then, of course, you got media images that reinforce that idea. So if they meet somebody who goes against it, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. Their perception, in fact, is deep to the point they might not even see that person. That person could walk right in front of them and not see them. There was a story about when the conquistadors from Spain first arrived in the Americas, right? And the natives there, because they hadn't seen a tall boat like that, they didn't see the boats coming, even though the boats were like obviously within eye distance, right? They didn't see it because they never seen boats like that, so they couldn't perceive it, right? That's how deep it is. Now, I don't know how true that actually is, but I could see that. Like, if you don't think, like, if you I'm turning this around. If you're a man and you think all the women are ratchet, or, baby mamas, terrible. If you run across a woman who's, here's a great example. Here's a great example in the black community. There's always this thing about all these black women being obese and everything, right? And for some guys, that's all they see, right? But then if they see a slimmer black woman, slimmer older black women, well, first of all, their eyes might not even see it. They might not believe it. They might go right past it. It's like, how I missed that, right? Because that's not my perception. Most of the women I see in shape. Most of the black women I see are in shape, even if they're older, right? But that's what I see because I already know you got to take that whole obese thing with a grain of salt. And that's a whole other conversation. But whatever the case, this is what I see because I know that exists. So my mind focuses on it, right? But understand that, like, a lot of times people have troubles. Like, how come this dude can't get what I'm saying, right? They don't have that perception. Here's another one, right? If a man's perception of women, like, he's non-select. Anybody who's following me know what I mean. He's non-select. Or I use the example of these guys who call themselves True Force Loneliness or Incel or whatever, right? They have a certain perception of women, right? And how it's hard for them to deal outside of that, right? Yet if you go to the other side of the spectrum and you got a guy who got multiple kids and women just throwing themselves at him, right? He's just throwing themselves. They just throwing themselves at him. His perception is going to be different. Now both men are going to deal with women on their level of perception, right? Like, they not going to see one group ain't going to see the kindness in women or the beauty in women. They just going to see the antagonism or, the rejection from women. While the other one is like, oh, wait, all these women are great, right? So when you dealing with anybody, you already have a certain perception of them. And it's normal, you already got a stereotype, right? You already got a stereotype of them and you already got a perception of how they're going to be, right? And I would say, even though I say people can only deal with you, well, yeah, it's still their level of perception, right? Still their level of perception, right? It ain't even some, that's everybody. If this is what they perceive, this is all they can see, boom. Now you might be, so if you something totally different, they can't deal with you. If you something totally different from their perception, that's why you get a lot of women. You get a lot of men who can't find like that loyal woman that they want because their perception is something else, or a lot of women who can't find that good man they say they want because their perception is different, right? And that's all they could deal with, because even if you present them with what they say they want, they can't deal with it. They don't know how. They don't have a blueprint in their mind for dealing with it, right? So that's something to always keep that in mind. Always keep that in mind. It's something I have to remind myself. I was like, because I remember even with that, I use a lot of relationship example because that's how I kind of learned that whole thing. Because a woman who was like a second mother to me, she said, Rom, a lot of these women don't know what to do with you. They don't know what to do with somebody like you. And, it's a perception thing. People see me and they surprised, right? Now earlier I had said something about the gym, right? This the kind of a tangent channel flow of thought. They say something. I remember I worked at this gym. Now I wasn't working in the government. This was more when I had my outside businesses and everything, right? And I mentioned to this manager, right? Because he had one perception of me, right? He had a certain perception of me. And I mentioned to him I had been in jobs when, I had a job I was managing attorneys, which I was, right? But his first thought was, you? And he said that with disbelief. But that's because he didn't have a perception of me outside of that gym. So it's just something to think about. So anyway, that's it for now. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.